Good morning, good day, or good evening, depending on when you're seeing this. I'm Charles Yellett. I run One More Concerned Millennial, and this is hopefully the first episode of the new podcast, Anxiety Cake. I have no idea this is going, but with me today I have Jake, who runs... what's your channel called, sorry?
My channel is called Jake Aston FTA, and it's sort of like an ethical philosophy-based YouTube channel and TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that.
Perfect. So, Jake is a long-standing friend of mine. We do know each other outside of the YouTube, TikTok sphere.
Yeah.
And I never really realised how much some of our views align, and thought that this would be a good starting point for both of our channels and both of us to get ideas flowing and conversations started about different things. One of the things I saw that sort of sparked this was Jake is involved and was involved in the assisted dying bill.
Yes, so basically I'll elaborate on that. I've been an advocate for the legalisation of assisted dying for quite a long time, actually, but I've only been sort of active with it recently. It's when I was a teenager and I first found out that, you know, if you're terminally ill and you're suffering, it's illegal for you to ask for assistance in ending your own life peacefully.
There's no way out of whatever you're trapped in. It's purely you stay that way until you're gone.
Exactly. So ever since I found out about that, I've been, passionate about this topic, and I've wanted it to be legalised. But it's only really been in the past, I'd say, couple of years where I've actually been vocal about it, and been putting petitions up on my social media. And since starting my own channel, I've made videos about it, and even went to Westminster to try and lobby the government about this issue. It's safe to say that I care about it a lot.
Good. I mean, people need to care. That's one of the bigger problems of the day. There's not enough caring in the world. Now, for those that don't know, assisted dying is legal and was first legalised and popularised in Switzerland with the company Dignitas. Lots of people within the UK were leaving the sort of constitutional laws that we have here to go to Switzerland to, end their lives in the way that they're choosing. I think their suicide pods, I think, was what was going around in the Daily Mail.
About those. Yeah.
Suicide pods sounds very macabre and dystopian for what it really is.
Yeah.
But then I believe the bill is either passed or passing Parliament, and looks as if it will become law soon.
Fingers crossed.
Soonish. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I was when I was at Westminster, it was for the first lot of debate in the House of Commons,
sure,
which it passed, and then there was one more recently, which I wasn't able to actually attend in person, but that passed as well.
Excellent.
And I remember we were talking about this before we started recording. I'm not sure if there's one more round it needs to go through before it's legalised or not, but it's almost there, basically.
Yeah, which is great. For those that don't know the lawmaking process in the UK, you start with a drafted bill, which usually is then sort of overlooked by a committee, depending on what sort of topic or sort of umbrella it would fall under the current government. They would then put that to the House of Commons once they're happy with the verbiage and making sure that it doesn't sort of overlap or overlay any existing laws. And then the House of Commons will, as a whole, read through the bill. Some MPs would make sure that they are there for that particular vote, and some MPs may not take a stronger stance on the point and may either abstain from the vote or do a vote from sort of postal, equivalent to postal at least.
Yeah.
And once that's passed, it then goes to the House of Lords, and then they do exactly the same process. They debate on it, see what clauses may want to be changed, see if they need to bounce it back to the Commons for something to be amended or added, and then it goes back through again. And once everybody is agreed in the Commons and the Lords, it then goes on to the King to be signed and made official law.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you're here, because you know more about the politics and how the law actually works than me. I'm just here for the philosophy, boys. I'm just is it okay to kill someone who wants to die? That's my jam.
I would say yes.
Yes, and I obviously agree with you. I think a lot of the things that the main thing that a lot of people object to when it comes to this bill is that I think they have this sort of very strict rule almost morally that it's always wrong to kill someone.
Yeah, I think that also comes from sort of potential, because we are, or were sort of a Christian country, that whole 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill,
exactly,
it falls under that sort of umbrella of morality. But like you say, if somebody is of sound mind, they should be given that choice to end their life how they choose. You know,
Exactly.
right to life, right to death.
And I think it's there's a how do I put this into words? I could talk for about 3 hours on like religious morality versus secular morality, and like what my moral foundation is and stuff like that. But because I don't necessarily want to turn this into philosophy 101, I'll try and keep it simple. But
Sure, for the people.
Basically, for me, someone who has been a philosophy nerd for quite a lot of my life, and particularly I've been interested in moral philosophy. So, like, what are morals? What do we mean when we use that word? When we say that we want to make the world a better place, what do we actually, specifically mean when we say that? That's been, a huge interest to me for a long time. And for me, I think it boils down to well-being. I know that's kind of a vague word to use.
It's very blanket, but
yeah.
I think that is the easiest word to sort of put everything that you think about in terms of how someone is treated or how you would want to be treated yourself under.
Exactly,
well-being.
yes. And so, but some people don't view morality that way, and I think that's the issue, and that's why people disagree on topics like this, because some people are more concerned with just following blanket rules regardless of whether or not they actually impact people's well-being,
Because that's the way it's always been.
exactly. Whereas I'm always sort of like questioning the consequences of any action, which can be stressful sometimes, and I'm like, am I harming anyone's well-being by doing this? Am I making people happy and healthy by doing this, or am I making them miserable or making them suffer?
Yeah.
And I'm always trying my best. No one can be perfect at it, right? But I'm trying my best to do the former, and
Yeah,
I'm trying.
I feel like as long as you're trying, that's sort of something to commend. Because
Yeah.
there's lots of people that either through choice or just convention don't really try. I can't
Yes.
blame anybody for that because I haven't always tried.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing I want to say just right at the beginning, which is this, which is like taking morality seriously does take time and effort. You actually need to think about the consequences of your actions. And most people that are, going to a 9-to-5 job and have kids to feed and stuff, they're so busy they don't really have the time to stop and go, is this an ethical thing to do? Is this not an ethical thing to do?
And by the end of their day, their time is now finished and their effort is spent, so they don't want to go home and just sit down and Google what's the ethics of the day.
Exactly.
What current bills are going through Parliament. It's not on the mind of every electrician or plumber.
Exactly, and that's why one of the things that I think should happen is I think that some type of ethical philosophy should be taught in schools, but whether or not that actually would happen, I don't know. I'd like to see it happen, because then I think people would, even if they're not spending their days thinking about it like me, crazy, psychotic, moral philosopher boy.
Is everything I'm doing okay?
Exactly, that's the problem I have. But even if they don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, just having like a basic understanding of what it is and why it matters, I think is important. But bringing it back to assisted dying quickly, I think that that is the fundamental issue with the disagreement, which is that some people follow these just strict rules regardless of the consequences, which is killing is always bad, no matter what. And then you've got people that are more focused on the consequences. Consequentialists is the philosophical term for that.
Okay.
I am a consequentialist. So I think,
mouthful.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Try saying that with your tongue tied after a few beers.
That's why it's not pub conversation.
Exactly. As a consequentialist, I think that any given action, including whether or not we legalise assisted dying or not, you have to look at the consequences and whether or not they're going to impact people's well-being. And I think that if we don't legalise it, people are going to suffer and die slowly in the tens of thousands potentially. When you Google how many people are suffering from terminal illnesses, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if you're forcing all those people to suffer and die slowly, I think if we brought in this bill with obviously regulations and stuff.
Massive regulations. I
Exactly.
think that's people's inherent fear. And when I was looking at the bill itself, I did sort of think to myself, well, it's really good that they have included language and clause in there that illustrates the importance of making sure that the person that is committing to the assisted dying and ending their life the way that they want to are of sound mind, are of sound body, that they're not being led or coerced by an external third party or a family member that may not have their best interest at heart. And obviously the checks and balances from within the assisted dying system, once it does then get up and running, are going to be super important, purely because of everything else that you see in terms of people taking advantage of maybe sort of, I use the umbrella term disabled people, but people that have either learning difficulties or disabilities that sort of affect their level of understanding of things, and are typically more trusting people than others.
Yeah.
You know, if someone comes up to them and goes, "Oh, I need money to get on the bus," those types of people are more inclined to go, "Oh, well, yeah, you can have some," whereas maybe somebody with all of their faculties might be a bit more inquisitive and questioning of, well, what bus do you need? Where are you going? Why do you need it at 3 p.m? Like, surely you can just go for a walk. So there's lots of stuff that I think is really, really good about it. Like, as you say, people that are forced to suffer in sort of relative silence, because realistically there is no way out. The big story I had to do some serious Googling to find was that of Jane and Tony Nicklinson back in 2011, 2012. He had severe, I think it was motor neurone disease, so he was essentially just trapped in his body, similar to sort of Stephen Hawking's level of disability, where, you know, there was very little to no movement from the neck down. He had to communicate via sort of computerized means, and they petitioned Parliament to let him die in this country. They said no over and over again, and that was when the assisted dying started coming up and people were made sort of more aware of Dignitas in Switzerland, because from 2010 onwards there was then an increase in people that were going to Switzerland, to Dignitas, to end their life the way that they want to, which is their right. I mean, I think you've had sort of some similar experience with somebody needing or wanting that sort of option and that not being there.
Yeah, I mean, my grandfather had vascular dementia, which is a tricky one, actually. I've made a video about this called why assisted dying should be legalized.
Yes.
And I spoke about my grandfather in that video, but the tricky thing about dementia is, like you say, you need to make sure people are of sound mind, and once someone's past a certain threshold, once they've been diagnosed with dementia, they no longer have sound mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so whether or not it would have been eligible for him to get it, I don't know. But all I know was that, like, he was declining and suffering as a result of his condition, and if he was of sound mind, he wouldn't have wanted to die that way.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. And as you say, by that point, it's almost past the point of no return. I mean, I see, when I was working in the bank, I see a lot of that in terms of people that wanted to maybe go on as a, you know, this thing or that thing to help their relative in terms of their finances, but then lots of people leave it that little bit too late, where they go past that point of being of sound mind, and then those people end up spending thousands with solicitors in terms of getting power of attorney documents drafted, then getting that all signed off by investigators, and it's a very costly process that then can take quite a lot of time as well, just to make sure that your relative is is acting in their best interests.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're able to do it before that person loses their sort of mental faculties, you can just go on as a joint account holder. It makes the whole process a lot easier, and you can then do it with no extra cost to yourself, instead of having to, you know, do it after the fact. Say someone does get dementia or whatever other sort of debilitating disease that stops their sort of cognitive function. It means that you then have to go down the route of getting a power of attorney document, whether it be for finances or health and wealth care.
Yeah.
And that is always something that is incredibly costly when you go through solicitors.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think that, well, the issues you brought up before about sort of making sure people are of sound mind, or making sure they're not being coerced and stuff, those are all, I just want to make it clear, because I didn't respond to that point. I want to make it clear that those are all valid concerns, but those concerns alone I don't think are enough to keep it illegal.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, because people, that's often, those are brought up in the arguments against the side that wants to obviously have this legalized. And I think that, again, you have to weigh up the consequences, right? So let's say that we don't legalize it, and it prevents anyone from being coerced, but potentially tens of thousands of people are going to suffer and die slowly.
Yeah.
Whereas if you legalize it with regulation to minimize any kind of coercion, it means that we'll prevent potentially tens of thousands of people from having painful, slow, agonizing deaths.
Yeah, I mean, even if you put it to 10,000, say that person lives past 5 days, that's millions of hours of suffering for people that is then just cut short, and those people can choose to leave how they want to leave.
Exactly, and how I put it in my video was, I asked the sort of viewer, That's you. I asked the viewer, how would you want to die? Right? Most people answer that question and they say, I'd like to die peacefully and painlessly in my sleep. And then when it comes to suffering terminally ill people, we say, no, we're not going to give you that choice. It's just incredibly cruel to me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, I would tend to agree. That's exactly right. Yeah, my final point on the assisted dying would be cool. Just to follow your domino of obviously, like, people say that they're concerned about the coercion, or if people set people up to die that aren't supposed to be dying. If you follow the opposite domino and go the other way, you're allowing people to minimize suffering. You're allowing families to sort of cut what could be sort of 5 years of dementia visits. You go and see someone that you've loved your whole life, that knows who you are. You go and see them and there is just nothing there, which is painful for the families as well, but then obviously terribly confusing and distressing for the person going through that. And especially now that we have all of these concerns with the NHS and waiting times and things like that, if you're able to put something in place, it's essentially like a DNR, if you're able to put it in place early enough, that means that once you're past that point of no return, your family can put that in place and you can go with dignity instead of hanging around for 5-6 years for people to just keep visiting you in whatever home is then making more money off of you. I mean, the one thing I also saw working in the banking sector is how much money is spent and used in terms of getting care for people. It's disgusting, man. I don't know if there's like a way to make it. I mean, are all of these places sort of privately owned, or is it? The majority are private.
Yeah.
Especially when you need sort of 24/7 care. It's not something that the NHS will give you or allow for it to happen. And I think that nurses should be paid a fair wage. I think that doctors and nurses do a job that I could never do with any amount of training whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they are invaluable. So yes, they absolutely should be getting a wage that befits what they're giving to society. But in the same breath, I feel like the thousands that go out to these companies every single month for that care, I think if you could cut all of that short, it means that the everyday person isn't spending, a few thousand on a lasting power of attorney document to make sure that they can have control of their relatives' finances and their health and well-being. It then minimises potential waiting times on the NHS for hospital beds and hospital visits. It means that someone's not constantly going in if, for example, they do have, dementia that makes them wander around or forget where they are, what they're doing. Then, that's minimising police resources, that's minimising NHS waiting times and everything else, and overall that creates a lesser burden on essential services.
For sure. I said so. It's not just about the well-being of the individual. It's like the well-being of society. Is legalizing this has like greater utility than just helping the individual.
Every person has a tree.
Yes.
And wherever that may lean to or reach to, you are minimising the harm for everybody else involved.
Exactly. 100% agree.
Speaking of minimising harm, Jake is a fully fledged vegan.
That's me.
I have dabbled. I have not converted just yet.
Yeah, we dabbled for lunch.
We did dabble for lunch, yes. Jake very kindly took me to Sainsbury's, showed me very easy alternatives. Some alternatives that are actually cheaper than the meat that I usually buy. And I would happily say taste more or less exactly the same. There's not a lot in it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say. I went into the little trip, I guess we could call it, a little bit more apprehensive because my previous experiences, especially with trying to buy plant-based, is they are usually sort of quite expensive for like the quantity that I receive.
Yeah.
But you showed me that that's not always the case.
Not always the case. It depends on the brand. It's like obviously, as with anything, even if with regards to animal products, it's like if you're going for like the best of the best, like the finest, it's going to be expensive, right?
That's true.
So when people say they're interested in going vegan, I want to suggest the tastiest stuff to them, right? But then they're like, oh, it's kind of expensive, and it's like, well, yeah, it's because I'm suggesting you the stuff that tastes best. There's loads of stuff out there that's cheaper and still tastes pretty good. It's just that I want to bring my A game when someone asks for the best alternatives,
Exactly.
But yeah, like as you said, that you can still have a plant-based diet on a budget and still enjoy yourself.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to win that match, then yes, you bring your A team and you make sure that you perform well. But on your day-to-day, you can scale it down a little bit. You don't have to break, as you say, you don't have to break the bank on every trip.
Exactly.
It can simply be something that you just sub out for something a little bit less if you're going to be doing something else with it. And then, I mean, you blew my mind earlier. I've learned something new today, that most just toasty bread,
just bread,
is vegan.
Bread is vegan.
Because
Obviously,
the first question I asked you through the door was, so I want to learn like what's easy alternatives for like bread, what's easy alternatives for milk.
And I was just like, I'll stop you there, bro,
because bread
is already vegan. Obviously, there are exceptions, as I said. Like sometimes brioche can be cooked in butter and stuff like that. But generally speaking, bread is made from plants.
Yeah,
it's all good.
I was rocked because to me, I still remember all the stuff of like, you know, it's water, flour, egg, butter, blah, and you know, cake mixing and things like that. But it's just not.
It's just not, and most of it isn't. Yeah. Just while we're on this topic, because the people watching / listening might not know why I'm vegan, because a lot of people, when you bring up this word or you bring up, you know, veganism in general, they
usually
have a sort
take
of
a back step.
A back step. They don't really.
Oh God, this guy's trying to convert
exactly.
me.
They don't quite get it, or for whatever. So I guess, should I elaborate on my reasons why?
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to give us a little backstory to where it sort of started and your journey to here, because you did mention that it wasn't sort of a linear journey. It happened sort of gradually rather than all at once.
It actually started just in general learning about like religious morality versus secular morality, because I was really interested in that kind of debate. And as someone who's not religious, I don't believe in God or anything like that, but I do care about being an ethical, moral person. So I was like, okay, well, where does that come from? And I essentially came to the realization that it's all about well-being and looking at your consequences and making sure you're making consequences that don't cause harm or suffering to others.
What's
right?
your impact? Is it positive or not?
Exactly. And so once I came to that realization, it sort of got me thinking, am I doing anything that's causing pain and suffering to others? And it made me look at what was on my plate. So that was kind of the first realization. But as I say, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like I had that realization. I was like, okay, no more animal products ever.
Yeah, only lettuce for me.
Exactly. It was like, okay, I'm going to try some meat-free alternatives. And I tried them and enjoyed them. And then it was just kind of, step by step from there. But the kind of main thing that I was thinking about was like, humans aren't magic in their capacity to like feel pain and suffer, right? Like humans have brains, we have central nervous systems.
Most mammals are wired the same if it's not a different variation. You know, we don't all look like giraffes, but we are mammalians.
And so the difference between me and my dog in our capacity to suffer and feel pain really isn't that much. And once you realize that, and once you realise that if ethics is about avoiding harmful consequences and causing pain, you then come to the realisation that kicking a human to death and kicking a dog to death, while not exactly the same, because humans may have a greater capacity for like psychological suffering, in terms of physical pain, it's really not that different. Yeah. And so then you have to ask yourself the question, what's happening to the animals in slaughterhouses?
Yeah.
And
I mean, your stuff was very eye-opening for me in the fact of how like pigs are killed in this country and beyond.
Yeah,
I just had no idea.
Gas chambers, bro.
Yeah, really archaic, really dark connotations of pigs being wheeled into gas chambers in cages so that they can't thrash around too much.
Yeah.
And what gas is it that they pour
CO2.
into? So it's just CO2. So it's just sheer oxygen, like lack of oxygen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just they just can't breathe, and then they sort of panic and scream for, I guess, up to a minute while they're lowered into the gas. And then some of them die from this experience alone. Some of them just lose consciousness, and then they're taken out, and then they have the
Jesus. Yeah, so they're not even fully checked if they're still hanging on. It's just...
Well, that's the thing is a lot of... I don't know how deep to go into this, and I don't want it to get too gory, but like...
we can gore it up.
Yeah, we can gore it up. But a lot of people have this idea that...
The truth is gory.
Yeah, a lot of people have this idea that like factory farms and slaughterhouses are humane because that's how it's advertised, right? And that's how we're brought up.
Sure.
But it's like, at the end of the day, this is a profit-driven industry, right? And so
else.
Their main goal is to kill as many animals as quickly as possible, make as much money, right? So
keeping costs down at the same time.
Yeah, keeping costs down at the same time. But it's like if when push comes to shove, profit is always going to trump the well-being of the animals. And so if whatever's the quickest way to kill as many animals as possible in the cheapest way, they're going to do it. And so if that means squeezing 5 pigs into a gas chamber versus one by one, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely, yeah. Because obviously, I think cows are still done more or less one by one with the
cows are bolt gunned. Cows are bolt gunned. But again, like even with a situation like that, I would say bolt gunning is probably causes less suffering than the gas chambers. Yeah,
but it's over quicker. But...
Yeah, it's less cruel than the gas chambers. But again, it's like I said, slaughterhouses, they're fast paced.
Yeah,
the workers aren't always fully trained as well. How do I word this? But people don't want to work in slaughterhouses, right? So it's like it's not like
if you do, then
it's not like a long line of people that have trained for it in college. You know, it's usually desperate people who need a job and they're willing to do anything for money. And so these people aren't well trained. And so when they do have to slaughter an animal and they have to shoot the cow in the head with the bolt gun, they're not always going to do it perfectly. If you want to get a nice quick death with no suffering, you have to hit the exact right spot.
Yeah.
And as it's fast paced and these people aren't trained very well, sometimes it takes 2-3 shots to bring down a cow. The cow's in pain. You know what I mean? It's like it's people like the idea of these places being humane, but when you actually think about how it would actually work in the real world, it's really not. And so
I mean, I always remember just in terms of like the failed attempts with the bolt gun. I remember that there was a story of when they changed certain executions by certain punishments for certain crimes were changed from having execution or beheading with sword to beheading with axe. And there was one particularly large lord, shall we say, that took nearly 7 swings with the axe to get his head off. And, you know, you say that and it puts it... I imagine lots of people would have that sort of, oh my God. But when they hear it about an animal, that's slightly removed because they're like, oh, but it's just animal. They don't understand. They eat grass. They're stupid.
And I think it boils down to, I think you watched my video where I brought up this term, but there is a term which people, if any conservatives are watching, they're going to instantly label me as woke for saying this.
Oh,
but
speciesism.
Speciesism,
yes. Where we put some above the others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is a genuine word that's been used since around the 1970s. It was popularised by my favourite moral philosopher called Peter Singer. Okay. He wrote a book called Animal Liberation in the 1970s, and even though he didn't come up with the word, he kind of like popularized it.
Sure.
And it's just this idea that like similarly to how we arbitrarily treat some groups of humans like worse than others based on something like their skin color or their gender or their sexuality, sometimes we look at species of animals and we arbitrarily treat them differently just because they're in a different species, even though that's nothing to do with how much they want to experience well-being or how much they don't want to suffer. We just say they're in a different group, so they matter less than this other group.
Yeah, they're different to this, so we like them less, and that's how we do.
Exactly, and so that's what speciesism is, and I think that plays a huge part of it. Whereas, like, if someone sent their dog to a slaughterhouse to be forced into a gas chamber, most people would think they were an absolute monster.
Yeah, and they would recoil and be like, how dare you?
Exactly, but if you do the same thing to a pig who's just as sentient as a dog...
Yeah, those same gammons would just be like, no, bacon, mate.
Exactly. And so for me, like, when I think about it, just as logically and as rationally as I can, there is no ethical difference between sending pigs to a slaughterhouse and sending dogs to a slaughterhouse. And so I think both should be stopped.
And their emotional responses to affection are super similar, which I had no idea until I saw like some of your bits on Instagram where you go to a farm and you scritch a pig and the pig just won't leave you alone because it just wants more scritches.
Pig wants
belly rubs.
More belly rubs, bro. Yeah. And pigs wag their tails when they're happy. And
do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Did not know that.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, even though again, they're different species. They've been separated by however many millions of years of evolution between dogs and pigs. But so much of like their fundamental biology is the same. So of course their personalities and the way they experience the world is going to be similar. And so I think that treating them so differently just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think. It doesn't make sense to someone that is taking that moral stance point.
Yes.
But I think by sort of convention and media input, I feel like it is easier to understand. I mean, it's the same way that people become sort of disillusioned with anything. If the media and the papers and social media now sort of shove it down your throat over and over again, you just kind of get used to the idea that there's a pig, it goes to there, you get bacon in your shop.
For sure,
There's a cow, it goes to wherever it goes, you have your burgers. It's not until I started seeing, personally, the videos where people have managed to, like, smuggle cameras and things into operating slaughterhouses, and you see quite how, like, dystopian and
Yeah,
just
it's not until you see it
creepy.
you realize how cool it actually is.
Yeah,
and
and it's so dark.
And the thing is like what you're saying is so true. Like propaganda plays a huge role in this, which is I'm sure a word that's going to come up a lot in this in this podcast. But like people will often see like animal advocates, vegans, whoever, like speaking up for animals and criticizing what happens on farms and slaughterhouses.
And it's met with eye rolls.
And it's met with eye rolls, and people will use the term vegan propaganda. But what I find quite ironic about that is that they won't be able to spot the pro-meat propaganda that's right in front of their face.
Yeah.
Like when you walk down a supermarket, all the pictures of of smiling farmers in fields with happy cows, and it's like that's nothing like what a slaughterhouse or a factory farm actually looks like. But it makes the consumer feel better.
Yeah.
And just while I'm on that point,
They were happy when they were alive, so it's all right to murder them early.
and here's the
For
thing.
the meat.
And here's the thing: is like while we're on this topic, it's the perfect place to go into it. Which is, it's not just the slaughterhouses which are cruel, because while there are some farms where animals will have decent lives if they're out in fields, that's not where most meat, dairy and eggs comes from.
No,
most,
factory farms.
Most of those products come from factory farms where they're cramming thousands and thousands of animals indoors in dark, unhygienic sheds because, again, profit over the well-being of the animals, right?
Absolutely.
And so these animals, most of them anyway, are living miserable lives in factories where they're standing in their own filth, and then they're rewarded at the end of it by being slaughtered. It's like I don't think there's any real defense for an industry like this if you care about the well-being of animals.
And I feel like the weird sort of hypocrisy, I guess you'd call it hypocrisy, of people that have pets, openly care about their pets, say that their pets are their fur babies and everything else, but will still go out and buy bacon, buy meat. And it's once again that speciesism, that split of where, cats, horses, dogs, rabbits, cute and fluffy things that we own and ride and stroke and love and then, grieve at the end of their lives.
Because of cultural normalisation, there's just a line down the middle.
And pigs, cows, chickens, who cares?
Yes, exactly. It's such a shame. And I think that most people deep down, and again, this is another accusation that some vegans get. People seem to be under the impression that all people who are vegan think all meat eaters are bad people, and I don't think that that's true. I think that good people are still capable of doing bad things.
Absolutely.
If they've been brought up to think that bad thing is normalized.
Conditioning.
Like we were talking earlier today about how in the past there were certain things that were completely normalized that nowadays we would look back on and think that
like slavery,
like that stuff is so horrible. How could anyone be okay with that? But because it was so culturally normalized back then, people never questioned it. And I think it's the same with how animals are treated nowadays.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. It's essentially sort of, I guess you could rebrand it as livestock slavery.
Yes.
We used to own people for our own gain just because we assumed they were less. Now we have exactly the same thing going on where we've now had this next level of sort of emotional reaching where it goes beyond being like, no, this other person is a person, to being like, well, actually this animal has value and emotions, and they aren't just some stupid thing. They aren't a commodity. They aren't a resource to be squeezed until they can't be squeezed anymore and cast aside.
Exactly.
They are living, feeling, breathing things.
Yeah, and I think that with that in mind, one of the videos that have I released it yet? No, the next video I'm going to release.
Teaser.
Yeah, teaser is a video called "Should We Treat Everyone Equally?" is the title of the video.
Okay.
And I don't know if this podcast is going to come out before or after. Probably after.
We can try.
But it's basically me talking about how the kind of principles and values we have with regards to equal treatment of people, at its core, should extend to animals. And by that I don't mean we should treat animals the same way we treat humans. I just mean that we should take their interests and their needs seriously. Like if I see a man and a woman that both need both need medicine, I'm not going to say, oh, you deserve the medicine because you're a man, but you don't because you're a woman, because they both have the same needs and they both have the same interest in avoiding their pain and suffering. And I think that a dog also has an interest in avoiding his pain and suffering. A cow also has an interest. And so we should give them that same consideration of taking their interests into account.
Absolutely.
And so that's probably a bit wordy and a bit like...
No, I mean, you could flip that on your head, because obviously there is a hierarchy when it comes... I mean, if we start at medicine, there is a hierarchy, because obviously if you have, a baby... and then you have an elderly person, you're more likely in modern society to give that to the baby because they have more life capacity. They have more sort of I don't know what you would call it, sort of more life to live, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And as sad as it would be for Margaret to, leave her family behind her, she has, or I would hope, had 80 happy years, or 8 years of life to... 80...
Yeah.
Can't be a grandma at 8, that's crazy. 80 years of life that hopefully has been lived in what she would hope is a happy manner, whereas a baby that is a baby
exactly has that whole life ahead of them,
has that life to live. And then you obviously have pregnant women and then men in there, and then who gets what.
And I think that this again is perfectly consistent with my position on the way we treat animals, which is that not all animals or not all living things should be given the same ethical considerations either. Like something like I don't know, an oyster is technically an animal, but it has no brain and, as far as we're aware, no real central nervous system.
No.
And so...
Purely reactionary creature.
Exactly. And so saying, it's equally cruel to, eat an oyster versus a pig, I don't agree with that. I think that it's far more cruel to eat the pig, because the pig actually has an interest in living their life and an interest in avoiding suffering, where, as far as I'm aware, oysters don't. And so
it's that level of consciousness.
Exactly.
Where, I can't assume that, or I wouldn't assume that an oyster thinks about going and seeing the sun for the last time.
Exactly.
It's spawned, it attaches, it grows, and then it focuses on growing and surviving and growing and surviving.
Exactly. Some animals are more deserving based on their needs, based on their capacity to suffer, and based on their capacity to experience well-being.
Well, whilst we're on the medical bit, I think it is also a thing that is not, or at least where I've looked, it's not as pushed or published about the fact that factory farms and factory farming requires not only, a lot of land and a lot of resources in terms of food and everything else, it also requires a huge amount of medicine.
Yes.
Because where you are crammed into such awful conditions for the majority of your life, and pigs are forced to live in their own filth, chickens are forced to live in their own filth in usually poorly ventilated, poorly kept conditions, that is the perfect breeding ground for awful diseases.
Exactly.
And that is why we saw diseases like bird flu, like mad cow disease and things like that.
Swine flu, yeah.
Swine flu, exactly right. Become a talking point for the media, because those diseases were supposed to only ever be within that species, but because we consumed them on such a large scale, and because the factory farming was such a huge thing, and because those animals were so heavily medicated, those diseases upgraded to zoonotic diseases, which is where you have a disease that is usually only within a bird or a swine,
and it spreads species to us,
and it goes to another species, which is usually not very common, but because one species consumes of that one so egregiously and excessively that at that point the national media had to be like, swine flu, stop eating chicken, stop eating pigs for a bit, and we need to clean this up. The fact that it needs to be cleaned up in the first place means that there's a problem with the fact that the meat probably ain't that good.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because I wasn't even sure that zoonotic viruses would come up in this conversation, but it's so true. It's like the factory farming of animals is a huge contributor to that. And so I think that this also ties into antibiotic resistance, which is something that a lot of medical professionals and the sort of health world in general is worried about, because we give animals antibiotics on factory farms to prevent them from getting sick, but then because they're all being given antibiotics, it increases the likelihood that antibiotic resistant bacteria will evolve, and then if we get it, we can't cure it with antibiotics, right?
Yeah. Or at least not the antibiotics that we have on hand.
Yes,
which
exactly.
was the massive issue with COVID-19. It was a mutation of a coronavirus that usually the World Health Organization is up to date on, and they go, right, so it's not this mutation, it's that mutation. We roll out this... what's the injection? Help me out here. The brain's gone.
Well, the vaccine.
The vaccine, thank you.
That's
we roll out that vaccine for that year because we've guessed correctly. We thought it would be one of these 4 mutations. It's that one. We've got that vaccine prepared. We roll it out to the people of the world, and that's absolutely fine. When COVID-19 appeared, it was a mutation that they hadn't accounted for, and that's why we went into massive lockdown, because they were like, we don't actually know how far this goes, because we've never had it in the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years since we were trying to keep up with the mutations in the influenza virus and in the coronavirus family, that they've always managed to have that on hand. And this was the first sort of showing that when we don't have that in place and we haven't guessed correctly and we haven't accounted for every possible mutation, the whole world shuts down because they had no idea about how devastating it could be.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that the health consequences of farming animals need to be
put under a microscope
for sure.
At the very least.
And it's just another reason among many for why I think we should stop eating them. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you told me that the 4 sort of main meat alternatives were mycoprotein, which is a kind of mushroom based they basically grow a fungus and turn it into like myconids in D&D. They're mushroom race of people.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'll just myco, right? Okay, so that's mycoprotein.
Yeah, so that's one of them. There's also wheat protein, which is there's a type of meat alternative that's actually been eaten for a very long time in sort of Eastern countries called seitan, and that's made from wheat protein.
Okay.
And it's
that's the crazy levels of a protein in it, isn't it?
Yes,
that's the thing that's got like more protein than actual
more protein than chicken. Yeah, per gram. Yeah. There's also pea protein and soy protein. So they're usually what like meat alternatives are made from.
So mushroom, wheat, pea, and
soy.
Okay. So nothing too offensive for people that already eat meat.
Nothing.
Then.
And I think that there is kind of like there's been some scaremongering going on because in the late 2010s, early 2020s, there was sort of a plant-based boom where like a lot of new alternatives were coming out and people kind of jumping on the train and trying a lot of them. But there's been some pushback from probably from the animal agriculture industry trying to paint these as all unhealthy because they're processed foods. But what I think a lot of people need to realise is processed doesn't always equal super unhealthy. It's, do you know what I mean? It's like you can...
No, absolutely. Because you could go down the ultra-processed route of like Pringles. They're not really that great because they've had loads of stuff done to the original potato.
But they're also not so bad that you should avoid them like the plague. They're just something that you should have in moderation, right? And so I think that's...
Moderation is the big thing that lots of people fall short on.
Exactly. And I think that's how to view meat alternatives, right? It's like they are perfectly fine to include in your diet. It's just don't eat them every day. You know what I mean? Like if you're having Beyond Burgers every day, just like if you're eating meat burgers every day, it's too much, right? And so I think
very true. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think that a lot of the scaremongering around some of the plant-based meat alternatives is far too extreme. Throughout the week, you can have like your chickpea curries and your beans on toast and your stuff like that.
And then with your vegan bread.
Yeah, and then on the weekend, treat yourself.
I'm still rocked by that. Honestly, I'm going to tell everybody that listen, like bread is vegan.
Bread is vegan.
Yeah, can we grow up a little bit? Like, because my biggest issue with like veganism is when I've gone out into like vegan spaces, because I do have like a few other vegan friends like that. They had their like stag hen do at like the vegan food festival in London.
Oh, cool.
Or one of them. I assume there's more than one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I met this guy there. He seemed really nice at first. Then he found out I wasn't vegan, and it was just 15 minutes of him just like, "Please, you should be vegan." And I was sort of like, "Oh yeah, I'm just a little bit busy in my life." And he just did not listen, did not give a shit. It was just, be vegan, animals matter. But I'm like, I know animals matter, mate, but I'm tired. I've just come from work for their stag and hen do. Don't really need you forcing this.
I think this is a huge thing for a lot of people.
I almost wanted to go out and buy a bacon sandwich just to spite him. Like, shut up, leave me alone.
And I think this is very common. I think that one of the first things that comes to mind when most people think about a vegan or veganism is preachiness, pushiness.
The militant vegan.
Militant vegan, right? And I think that there's an element of truth to that because once you find out that something is unethical or cruel or immoral...
You do want to change people's minds.
Exactly, you want to change people's minds. But I think that the biggest mistake that most vegans make is not trying to work out what an effective form of advocacy is. They you know what I mean? They think this is wrong, this is cruel, I want to do something about it, but they don't go, what's the best way to convince people? And I think that the best way to convince people is not to shout at them, not to call them names, not to call them murderers, but actually just sit them down, talk with them if they're willing to have a conversation, and then explain your reasons why in the most non-judgmental way you can.
Yeah,
then,
I mean, my big thing that I try and say is, like, correct me, don't cancel me.
Yes, exactly.
You know, guide me down your path and be willing to accept that I might not want to walk it with you.
Exactly.
Not just to be like... For me, I always attribute it to kind of like the Bible bashery type people.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like people have the same sort of reaction of recoiling from people that are like, come to church on Sunday, come to church on Sunday, come to the temple, blah, blah, blah. The same way that people are like, stop eating meat, meat is murder, da, da, da. And when you use big words like meat is murder, you kind of be like, well, I'm not killing anything.
Exactly. No one wants to view themselves as a bad person, right? And so if all you're doing is calling people bad people for their food choices, they're already going to get defensive. They're just going to leave the conversation. Even if you think that what we do to animals is objectively cruel, and I think it is, it doesn't mean that everyone that's supporting it wants to be a cruel person.
Sure.
Like I said before, they just might be unaware, or they might have just not really thought about it before. And so I think, what I'm trying to do with my channel is make videos that even if you're not vegan, you can watch the videos on animal ethics and understand where I'm coming from, and then be like, if I do agree with this, should I make changes in my life to, be more in line with these morals?
Yeah, I mean, if someone is trying to take that sort of first step, I mean, you mentioned like beans on toast, simple vegan meal. Most people have that in their cupboards.
Exactly,
Easy to do. You're already halfway there to making that little step. What would you say is like an easy step or an easy sort of stepping stone for people to try and adhere to? Or what should they be sort of aiming for first? Because you said that it was that gradual change from, only eating meat products. I mean, not quite carnivore diet, but not...
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, but... What was sort of the first sort of couple of dominoes that made you... I mean, obviously, being aware of the suffering that it causes was a big sort of starting point.
Yeah.
But what would you say to someone that is in a 9 till 5 working like either a desk job or, the plumbers and electricians that, they love their dogs, but they do love the bacon sarnie on Sunday. And I think the moderation part is sort of a good way to get people into it. You don't have to convert fully right away, but what would you say is the first sort of couple of things that people could try and maybe either swap out or start looking into to try and get them on that path?
Cool. So I'd say start with simple swaps and try and create meals that you already enjoy, just make them a vegan version. So like, let's say for example you like spaghetti bolognese.
Okay.
All you really need to do is swap the beef mince for like a soya protein mince, lentils if you want something that's more like whole foods, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just you make a vegan version of what you already like, and then it's like you're not reinventing the wheel, you're just making simple swaps. I said.
Okay.
And then if you like milk in your tea or your coffee, instead of dairy milk, have oat milk or soy milk, simple swaps. And
because I went on a real journey with milks, because I found out that I was a little bit lacto, and since I started cutting it out, I realised that things just worked a lot better in terms of my body, because I went through like almond and oat and soy and then unsweetened cashew, and it was quite bombardment at first.
A roller coaster of milk.
Yeah. And I was as soon as I sort of walked down the long life milk aisle in like Asda, I was like, this is a lot, and I don't know where to start. I don't know what to, but I know now that oat has that sort of like sweeter tinge, which is quite good in the teas and the coffees, because then you almost have to skip the sugar, which is always great. But what's your sort of like go-to milk-wise?
My go-to is oat milk, just because I think it tastes the nicest of the plant-based milks. Obviously, some people say that it can be kind of high in sugar, but you can get no sugar or low sugar versions. So it's like it's do what
cuts that argument out.
Exactly, yeah. So oat milk's my go-to, but soy milk is a good one as well, especially if you're into like getting lots of protein in, because soy has a lot of protein in there. And then you can get loads. There's like hazelnut milk, there's cashew milk, there's coconut milk, there's almond milk.
I found coconut milk like really off-putting. It's like a funny texture in the...
I don't mind it in like desserts, but for like teas and coffees, no coconut milk, thanks.
No, I remember I put it in like because I tried to like indoctrinate my mum a little bit and just like do the like blind taste test.
Yeah.
As soon as I put it in the coffee, little like bits started rising, and I was like...
Some plant-based milks don't go well in tea, but like the refrigerated like oat milks and soy milks and all that, they're fine. They're all good in tea. So simple swaps. There's so many.
So mince is quite a simple one then, because instead of buying your beef or whatever mince or your 20% pork beef mincy thing, you just go corn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing, is like, and again, we were saying this earlier, like not all corn products are vegans. If you want to go completely plant-based, then you either look for the vegan corn products, or go for a different company that is making completely plant-based mince. But so you just go for a meat-free mince, or then even something like with eggs, for example. when I went completely vegan in 2020, I used to enjoy eggs, and so I wasn't sure how I was going to like find a swap. I was like, do I just give it up completely and not find a swap, this and that? And one thing that I found actually works quite well is a replacement for scrambled eggs is actually scrambled tofu. Have you ever had scrambled tofu?
No.
So you take...
My experience with the tofu have not been great.
Yeah,
I won't lie.
first time I tried tofu, I didn't like it because I tried it on its own and I went, what is this bland, beany textured thing? But I later found out that kind of blandness is actually kind of a pro because it means you can flavour it however you want. So if you want to make something that tastes like barbecue, you can like marinate the tofu in a barbecue seasoning and it becomes a barbecue tofu, or you can marinate it to taste like, I don't know.
I mean, I know it kind of removes the vegan out of it because I don't think it is vegan sauce. But could you then, in the same sort of vein, marinate it in like a Nando's sauce? To,
yeah,
like,
exactly. You make spicy tofu.
Like your peri-peri chicken tofu.
Exactly. Yeah. So you could season it however you want, and then obviously how you cook the tofu is going to vastly differ how it comes out. But like you can cut it into slices, cook it, press it so it's like nice and firm, or you can mash it up, cook it in a pan, and it goes kind of like the consistency of scrambled eggs. Right. And so I found that scrambled tofu is a nice swap for.
Okay, because I'm not going to lie. After my first few forays into tofu, I just wrote it off. I thought this is grim. This is weird. This is not nice in my mouth.
Yeah, and I don't blame you because especially if you tried it plain, then plain tofu sucks. Right?
I don't think it was plain, but it was like in a thing, and I just couldn't get over the mouthfeel. I was just like, not for me.
And there are ways you can get around that. Like I said, that depending on how you cook it, it can be firmer or less firm. But some people...
I think it was just because it was so far away from whatever the meat thing alternative was in terms of texture that it just kind of messed with my brain too much for me to enjoy it.
And I think the best way to view tofu is don't view it as a direct meat replacement. It is high. Okay. It is high in protein, so it is a replacement in that sense. But like texturally, it's not like meat. But it's just like a different plant-based protein source, and it's a good one. It's pretty healthy. I know that before a lot of the newer meat alternatives came out, that was like a go-to vegan staple, and I think it is. Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't write it off completely. I'd just say maybe you need to find the way to cook it and prepare it that works for you.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Find the dish that sort of welcomes it a bit more.
Exactly.
Okay.
One day, if you want to invite me around and I'll make you a tofu scramble, I will. Hell yeah. So
with our vegan toast.
Exactly. And then
I'm not going to get over that. That's going to be like in my head for the rest of this week. Just like all bread is well, not all bread, but
another thing you asked me was that like. With it regards to some people being put off by having to feel like they need to go 100%.
Yeah.
Which is even though I would like for that to happen, obviously, because that's if everyone went 100%, there would be no more animal farming. Hooray!
Yeah.
But realistically, that's not going to happen for everybody, and so
overnight.
I would say exactly, or overnight, and so I would say that even if you have to do it gradually, which is what I did, or if you think you can only manage like a 80-90% plant-based diet, it's still worthwhile to do that, you know? And I know some vegans might argue with me on that because they're more concerned with the principle of being vegan rather than the pushing for progress. But as we spoke about earlier as well, as much as I am a principle person, I think we should try and be pragmatic and push for progress as best we can. And so I think if we can get as many people as possible to go 80 or 90% vegan.
Yeah. I mean, what I started doing in my first little like investigation into like veganism and things like that and different alternatives was I set myself the challenge of having like a vegan week.
Yes.
So for 1 week in the month, I would go out and I would make sure that I bought sometimes I struggled, so I did just buy like a tin of soup because I knew that it's all just vegetables. I know that's a really boring alternative to what is actually out there. But that's what I sort of settled on. It would be like, you know, beans on toast, or that's when I stumbled across corn mince. And I was sort of like, right, well, this is super simple because, as you say, whatever dishes you make, whether it's just like bolognese or meatballs or whatever else,
swap out the non-vegan products for vegan ones.
And it became a lot easier once I realised that instead of trying to, as you say, like reinvent the wheel, if you just take a meal and do those simple swaps, it becomes a lot less sort of all-encompassing. It becomes a lot less to think about as well.
Exactly.
Because I think people do struggle to put that effort into diet because if you've been brought up, like most people will have been, in a meat-eating household where, you know, you have your chicken Sunday roast and things like that.
It can be like daunting to think that you have to just completely come up with an entire, you know, new cuisine of new meals, you know? And so, I think that, just I think those tips would be what I would say to someone that's vegan curious, as that's the way you. I think that's the way you put it. Yeah, and another thing that I would say is in order to stay motivated to push for progress, whether or not you end up at 100% vegan, which would be ideal, but it might not happen,
Yeah.
or whether you just need that push to go 80 or 90%. Trying to remind yourself of the pros of doing this, which is like the animal ethics side of it, which we spoke of already, or not funding animal cruelty anymore. There's also like the environmental side of it, which is just farming animals is so resource intensive. It uses so much like land, water, fuel. The CO2 emissions are through the roof. I think I heard a statistic recently. Fact check me on this, but I think that animal agriculture is responsible for more emissions than the entire aviation industry, like across the entire planet. So like if we stopped farming animals, we would make a bigger dent in our emissions than if we stopped flying planes.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's huge.
I guess when you think about, because I suppose the land is the big part.
Yeah, it's
because when you have all of the chickens to make all of the
But it's not just the animals, and this is the huge thing that people don't consider. It's not just the animals. The animals need to be fed. We are.
So then you've got a field for every bit of food that those things are going to eat as well as.
Exactly. So we are cutting down the Amazon rainforest, and when you look up why, predominantly a lot of the rainforest is being cut down to grow soy, and people go, oh, well, people should stop eating soy then. It's like, no, this soy is being fed to animals.
Yeah.
This soy is being grown to feed cows so you can eat beef. So it's like if people stopped eating animals, not only would we stop farming the animals and causing cruelty to those animals, but we would stop needing to grow so many crops, which means we would cause less deforestation, which, funnily enough, harms less wild animals as well.
Well, and also going on from that as well, if you're then cutting down on the amount of growth that you need for actual crop that's just going to be turned into feed for us, then you're also minimising insecticides, you're minimising damage to the environment around those fields, as well as anything wild that wants to go into those fields. Because I remember there was a huge thing about the UK wanting to legalise certain insecticides that they use in America that would decimate so much of our wildlife.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Yeah, like you say, it's not just the harm to the animals on the farms that matters. It's like harming wild animals is bad too. And so
follow the domino.
Exactly. And so if we can reduce the amount of land we're using to grow plants to feed the animals, then we're harming less wild animals as well as harming less animals in farms. And so it's like the dominoes, the knock-on effect of this is that we would cause significantly less harm ethically and environmentally if we stop farming animals.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just went as far, I mean, you said that the whole farming bit of, or is it just like livestock contributes more to CO2 emissions than
animal agriculture as a whole.
So as a whole,
it's not just the farming. It's if you put all of how it works together. So the
livestock itself.
The livestock itself is the growing the food to feed the livestock, the water that needs to be used on the livestock, the transporting the livestock to and from the slaughterhouse,
as well as transporting the water and the food to those places.
Yes,
as well.
Exactly. If you put it all together, it's more.
And then insecticides over all of the plants.
It's huge, dude. This is why environmental scientists have been telling people to cut down on meat for decades, and people don't really take it seriously. Like since the 90s, climate scientists
have always been a fad.
Exactly. Yeah. Since the 90s, the climate scientists have been, we need to significantly reduce our meat intake, and people go, what difference is it going to make? It's like if everyone did it, it would make a really significant difference.
I mean, even if you don't put it at all, if you simply do like 50%, if you halve all of the livestock needed, and you halve all of the food that's needed for the livestock, and you halve all of the water that needed, and all of the transport
everything in half, they have massive impact.
Huge.
Exactly.
Huge.
And I think this segues on quite nicely, because it's like bringing about that kind of future where it's a more ethical and more environmentally friendly future.
Not impossible.
Not impossible. We can get there, but how do we get there? And I think that is a good kind of overlap between what my channel and what your channel is about.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Because this is where politics comes into it. Yes. How do we achieve that future?
Well, it ties into lots of different things. I mean, it's all about who's in power that can then get bills passed like the assisted dying bill to get that into a political sphere where it can be debated and eventually passed into law. But it's about making sure that you have either the right people or the right party, depending on which sort of avenue you want to explore with that, gets you there fastest. I mean, obviously, if you want to boil it all the way down, at the minute, foreign affairs and sort of international goings on are the real dominating factors in politics of the now.
Yeah.
You know, you have lots of people upset at, you know, immigration and certain sort of party stances on immigration.
And so I guess, like, comparatively, because all of that's going on,
it's so far down on the
concern
list.
for the environment, concern for animals is just way down on the list.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, people still litter.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you want to look at, you know, people's attitudes towards the environment, if people still litter, we're not quite there.
I know it's a shame, and the one of the reasons why I think it is a shame is because it's like this stuff does affect us too. Like, again, like I said, not only is it impacting like the animals and the environment, but it's like those things are affecting our lives, like climate change, or like how much food we're able to grow for ourselves. Like, imagine how much more food we'd be able to grow for humans if we weren't growing so much for farmed animals. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It would be so much more sustainable if that happens. But I think that, and I'm sure this will relate to this, the changes that you want to bring about in your channel as well. I think we can't just wait around for the people in power to do the right thing.
No.
We need to have a movement of people pushing for this stuff
Yeah.
from the bottom up. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
talk about like top-down change, and they think that laws need to be changed and governments need to do stuff. But it's like,
laws don't even come into politicians' minds unless they are pushed from somewhere below them.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
you can't rely on politicians. And that's what you get from the vast majority of people, whether they hate immigrants, love immigrants, hate tax, love tax. You can't trust politicians.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the case for a really, really long time. Lots of the people I speak to say that they have either never voted or very rarely voted because they see that when they do vote, it doesn't matter. And when they don't vote, it doesn't matter.
I think what you're saying is true. A lot of people seem sort of like
Disillusioned.
Yeah, disillusioned, and they have this sort of defeatist attitude, like their vote won't make a difference. But it's like,
But I don't think that's misplaced, and I think that's like
Yeah.
the core of the issue is that people aren't wrong. Because you know, especially with like the most recent change where we went from Tory government to Labour government, you know, loads of people that I knew were really excited for it. They're like, thank God, right, we've got the Tories out, we've got Labour in, we're going to see real positive change for the people because they're going to raise the taxes here, they're going to do this for us here, they're going to make sure that public services, grow because that's what typically, historically, Labour governments have done.
and it hasn't really happened. Yeah.
And even if, and I get this a lot as well, lots of commentators and political analysts say that we haven't given the Labour government enough time.
Yeah.
We haven't given the Labour government enough time. And the thing that always comes across my mind whenever people talk about time is always, weirdly, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Because he is who he is. He is Austrian-born, American citizen, went there, had great success in Hollywood, and then one day just decided, I'm going to do politics.
Yeah.
Because I've got the following, people know who I am, and I'm going to get in there and I'm going to take all of my drive and my passion for bodybuilding and life into that for serving the people of California. And people were losing their minds when he ran for government because they were like, he's an actor. What is he like?
Yeah.
How can that translate into politics? How can that translate into positive change? But people voted for him, he got in, and as he said, that's when the work started. And he realised that it's a lot more all-consuming than it looks from the outside.
Yeah.
And he spoke on how like his personal relationship struggled, all because he poured and had to pour so much time into that. But political analysts said that he moved California ahead like nearly 20 years in the 5 that he had as governor.
Yeah.
Because his opinion wasn't, and his drive wasn't based on thinking that I need to win back those voters next election cycle.
Yeah.
I need to stay in this office for as long as possible, because he realised very quickly that it's not that fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, it's a lot of people pleasing, and the awful bit is that as soon as you find a way to please some people, you realise that loads of other people are really upset that they're now happy.
Yeah.
And what he did is he just took his own stance and was like, cool, so instead of pandering to all these different groups of people and trying to do it together, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and you're going to do it because it's now law.
Yeah.
Like, he made all of the, like, carbon emission goals and environmental goals insanely huge.
Yeah.
Insanely huge. As, of course, he would
Yeah.
as Mr. Olympia. Make it way oversized and be like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I need you as my political aides to show me how to make it happen and how we get it all passed. And that's exactly what he did. For 5 years, he just pushed and pushed and pushed, and people, lots of people on both sides of the aisle in America, Democrats and Republicans,
Yeah.
said that he moved California forward in crazy ways because he didn't care that he wasn't going to be in
Yeah.
next election cycle. He wasn't trying to pander to people. He wasn't trying to make sure that he had that political office for any longer because he didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
He didn't enjoy it, but he thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm only going to do it once and I'm going to make my impact. And people say that he pushed California forwards nearly 20 years
Yeah.
in terms of, in comparative terms of, if a career politician had got that office,
Yeah, exactly.
they would not
The
have...
progress wouldn't have been anywhere near as significant.
No way.
And I think that's obviously amazing what he was able to do. But I think sitting around and waiting for the next Arnold Schwarzenegger to turn up, like in the UK, that's not
Improbable.
That's not how we're going to make change. And so,
No.
like you said, you need like people to come together, work together, bottom up, and force politicians' hands to do the right thing.
Sorry,
Basically,
I just chuckled at bottom up and I feel like...
bottom up. Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, like.
Bottom up politics, why not?
But do you know what I mean? It's like if our politicians are so concerned with like just trying to grab as many votes from either side of the political spectrum just so they can stay
In office.
as long as possible, they're not really making progress.
No.
Or at least, at the very least, as charitably as I can be, making progress fast enough.
Exactly.
And
It should be progress for the people, not progress for profit or progress for staying in political
Yes,
office.
but the only-
like, you have to do it for the good moral reasons,
Yes.
for the well-being of the people,
But the
not
only
just for the
way-
people that vote for you or make sure
Yes.
that you get voted in.
But the
next
only
time.
way we're going to get politicians to do that is either by, making sure we happen to vote for or like elect politicians within parties that are like that, but also to force their hand. It's like sometimes politicians want to do the right thing, but they're scared to because they think they're going to lose votes.
Yeah.
And so if you have a mass movement of people all coming together, criticizing the bad behavior, saying that we want more of the good behavior, and if it actually affects the economy...
Which it has done,
Yeah, exactly.
historically.
Exactly. Then the politicians' hands are forced, and they will be forced to do the right thing. And this relates to, whether it be making progress towards the environment, or progress towards how we treat animals, or progress towards legalizing assisted dying. If you have enough people coming together and either like speaking out or boycotting products or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it will literally force politicians' hands
Yeah.
to make better choices.
And I can never blame anybody for being disenfranchised and apathetic towards politics, because it's by design.
Yeah.
You don't have to look that deep to realise that we've been very much desensitised to political faux pas and political, criminality almost. You see that they vote favourably and make laws favourably for people that are in their pockets or have contributed to their election run.
Yeah.
Because, in this world, nothing is free.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get that 100,000 from that particular person, at some point in your office, they're going to expect some passing of a bill or obstructing of a bill
Yeah.
to make sure that conglomerate, that person, that power is maintained.
As a person that has tried to lobby the government one time, and,
Successfully.
and as a poor person that tried to lobby the government one time, I can only imagine how many super wealthy people have gone in there trying to lobby the government, flashing the cash basically, and saying if you do this and enact this law XYZ, you'll get all this money.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder that progress is so slow. When
Exactly, because
the
campaigning is not
Yeah.
cheap. I mean, to
Yeah.
have a political party exist at all, so independence you can just run. But if you want an actual political party to try and run in multiple constituencies up and down the country, that costs you £10,000 straight away.
Yeah.
Just to have your political party exist for a year, £10,000.
Yeah.
I say, for a poor person, for a person in, I would say from sort of 18, which is the vote, the aging vote in the UK, all the way up to sort of your early 30s.
Voting age. You said aging vote.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 18
Voting
is voting age in the UK. But if you put it from sort of 18 to easy break off 18 to 30.
Yeah.
Most of those people don't own their own property just yet. Most of those people are renting or are students or are beginning to sort of start their journey of independent living. And for those people, it's very difficult to see how politics plays into their lives, because especially sort of on the younger end of that, sort of the 18 to like 24-year-olds, those people, I would say for the most part, have been sort of indoor kids. It's been PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, PS5, and whereas we used to have to go outside because there was nothing to tie us to the inside, then we knew the importance of being out and about, and we could see that this is where we need to be, and we need to protect the outside, we need to look after the environment, and politicians have a large part to play in that. And we have this continuation on deterioration of well-being in this country for the normal people, and essentially politics does matter.
It absolutely does.
And if you can get a party in that does have people's interests at their heart rather than large corporations, you will then see positive change.
For sure.
But it's about, like you say, galvanizing a people behind one sort of unified vision is really, really hard.
And I think
we can't even agree on diet half the time. So how are you going to get people to agree on education, healthcare, diet? There's so many different bits and sides that it's very difficult to get everybody walking in the same direction.
But I think this is the reason why, despite that old adage that you should never talk about religion or politics, I think that you should be talking about it, because that's how you get people interested in.
I can't blame anyone for not voting or not being interested in politics, because for most of our lives, especially the sort of younger end of the voting range, because 18 is the age of that you can vote out in the UK, and if we take sort of the 18 to sort of 30-year-olds, most of those people have debt, whether that be from university or just debt you've accrued in your life, whether it be credit cards or whatever else to pay for your holidays abroad. The majority of those people don't own a house just yet, but are trying to save for that dwelling. And typically speaking, those are the people least likely to vote.
Yeah.
But those are the people that are most affected by politics and political decisions that happen. So, decisions and rulings that happen on taxation, things that go on like the EU referendum, for example. We left the EU, and now there are extra costs in going abroad. You have to pay for the little bit of addition because now we're going into the EU from outside of the EU. So there's additional fees and things on the flights that you get and everything else.
Thanks, Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I feel very strongly about as a Ramona at heart. But and I spoke to loads of people, and I was so confused about how many people were convinced to vote Leave as young people. Yeah. Because none of it benefits us. Once we left the European Parliament in that type of way, it meant that the European Union in that way, it meant that the EU sort of framework for keeping our government in check was entirely removed. Yeah. Which is how we then saw this, I would say, very, very quick rise in sort of people really trying to garner political favour with MPs, because it meant that they would shine some light on them. I mean, we left the EU, and when COVID came, we had loads of people making loads of money, all because they were Tory peers or friends with MPs, and they were told that, I can't remember her name, but there was one lady that was one of the people that became a billionaire during the pandemic. Yeah. And that was purely because she converted her warehouses from what they were in the beginning of her sort of whatever she was doing with them, to creating masks and PPE for like NHS contracts and things like that, and she became a billionaire through doing that. And then you have the PPE scandal, where loads of that stuff that was made in those factories and warehouses by people that were friends of Tories MPs have made loads of money on the government wasting money.
Yeah, I know.
And when you follow down the rabbit hole, it's not that difficult to see that as soon as we've come out of the European Union, politicians have been doing crazy stuff in terms of embezzling, in terms of, getting crazy things put on their expenses list. I mean, MPs' expenses needs to be reviewed in a very, very real way, because there are some people that genuinely... So MPs get a very, very healthy wage anyway. It's between sort of 60 and 70,000. They also gave themselves a very juicy pay rise during COVID, because, they're working hard.
Yeah, for sure.
And the expenses of some of these MPs, which are all public knowledge, you can go and look them up, you can go and see exactly how much they've all spent. Some of them range from like 15 quid for the year all the way up to like £22,000. And when you have people in power claiming expenses on more than some people's entire yearly wage, you can't shy away from the fact that there needs to be a review on that. And, if you're getting a private jet here, there and everywhere, you should probably, not go there all the time. Or better yet, walk somewhere once in a while.
Yeah.
And, I'm never going to say that we should be stopping them from fulfilling their duties as members of parliament, as people that owe a debt to their constituents, trying to make the country run better. But we should also not really be allowing people to expense
to do that.
something that is inherently more than some people's yearly wage.
But I think the points you've brought up just there, I think they're connected, because like the people's apathy, or I say apathy, and
apathy, disinterest. Lots of people
apathy,
say like, "Oh, I vote; it doesn't matter. It's a waste of time."
Apathy, disinterest, and ignorance. And I don't use the word ignorance in a bad way. Some people just don't understand politics, right? Because they're not interested in it. They don't learn about it, right?
That's the other thing. I didn't realise that it's not widely taught in schools, because it was taught in my school from like year 9 onwards.
Wasn't taught in mine, and so these things, I think, allow that to happen. So because people don't really understand politics, or they're not interested, and they don't really know what's going on, they feel less likely to vote, which means the people in power stay the same, which means they're able to continue giving themselves pay rises and just being greedy, and just, their bank accounts fill up off of, the taxpayer's dime, if you will.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's the plague of career politicians. That shouldn't be your career. Your career should be bettering the country, not trying to be a politician.
Exactly. And so I think that this can be remedied by educating people about politics, raising, I guess, class consciousness for any...
Well, I think it's just raising awareness in the fact that if you are out there and you genuinely believe that your vote doesn't matter, I would say you are wrong.
Yeah,
you are wrong.
For sure, yeah.
Political participation is how you change things. If you don't like how much you pay tax on stuff, if you don't like new rulings on what you can do with your business, whether you're a sole trader or otherwise, if you don't like what people are doing in terms of immigration, you can vote for a different party and different things will happen. But you have to then rely on the person that you're voting on, not just as an MP or as a spokesperson for that party, but as a person.
Yeah.
Because, in this country we have constitutional democracy. So we have the king as sort of the highest sort of power in the land, which is then, but he is answerable to the constitution and the government.
Yes.
But the way everything sort of works and interlaces is where everybody gets super confused, and it's not at all baffling, because it is a bit of a mess. Because we have so many different aspects of different sort of historical democracies within our own that it's very difficult to figure out what does all of this really mean. But in its essence, if you have... So where you are in terms of where you live determines your constituency. So your constituency is a group of postcodes and a land area that then roughly equates to having 70,000 people-ish in that stretch of space.
Yeah.
Then you all come together and you vote for one person as your member of parliament
To speak on behalf of
the people in
Yes.
that constituency, which is more or less across the board for England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Each constituency is for 70,000 people or thereabouts. I believe
Yeah.
the lowest is 68,000, the highest is 76.
Yes.
And you go out to vote on general election day. You put the party down, and you vote for that party. That person gets in, and then
Yeah.
they go to Parliament to represent you. Now, once that person is in Parliament, they are both their own person as an independent human being, but they are also part of the party.
Yes.
Now, some parties are more than happy for people to sort of vote on issues and bills and things that come through the House as they wish. Other bills and rulings and things like that, they will have what they call a whip system. So you have a 1 line, 2 line, and 3 line whip. So at the start of the year, they know sort of quite a lot of what the running order will be for things that are brought through Parliament in terms of bills to be voted on and other sort of issues of the day.
Yeah.
And typically each party member will be given that running order, and they will have different levels of whip next to those bills, for example. 1 line whip means that some people will need to attend, but it's not super important. We're happy to see this one coast on through.
Okay, yeah.
Then 2 line whip will be something a little bit more important to either the party or the movement or the people of Britain. And then a 3 line whip is mandatory. You've got to be there. So something like the EU referendum would be a 3 line whip. You've got to show up. You've got to vote.
Yes.
That's not something you can sit at home and pretend you didn't see the memo. Like you've got to
Okay,
be
yeah.
there. Then 2 line might be something on an education where certain MPs who might not be on any sort of educational committees or part of the cabinet, for example.
Sure, yeah.
They wouldn't turn up to those ones because it's not important to them. So it's that weird split between like personal politics and party politics that then just sort of confuses people even more.
I think that part of the confusion as well is that people almost treat politics almost like sports teams, in the sense that they
my guy versus your guy.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, say for example, when someone isn't educated on politics, they don't really know what the policies are, what they're voting for, but they're like, oh, my family votes Conservative, or my friends vote Reform, or whatever.
Arsenal,
exactly.
So
Exactly. They treat it almost like a football team. Whereas I think if you actually want to make your country a better place, and I'm going to bring up one of my favourite words again, if you care about the well-being of others, you can
and your own well-being, because it all affects you.
Exactly. Yeah, the well-being of yourself and others. You can just do a little bit of research into what kinds of policies and what kinds of politics make countries happier. And I think if you can look up statistics,
or even if you make it as selfish as you possibly can, just say, what do I want?
Yeah.
If you're plumber, electrician, whatever, bus driver.
And funnily enough, I think the answers to both those questions are usually the same. What's best for you as an individual is usually what's best for the community as a whole, but people don't think of it that way.
No.
And I think that if you look up statistically what are the happiest countries on earth, usually on the top of these lists come countries like Denmark, Sweden, Finland, places like that, and they tend to be places that have free healthcare, free education, paid for via taxation, and stuff like that. And so I think our priorities in this country for a lot of people are placed wrong. It's not that you shouldn't be concerned about immigration or you shouldn't be concerned about X, Y, Z. It's just that if you look at what's actually worked in other countries, there are more pressing policies to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what we need to educate people on, so that we can steer the country in that kind of direction.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that the entirety of the political sphere is incredibly heavy on jargon. And if you don't know what that jargon means, you've then got to go look it up. You've already lost people.
Yeah, that's true.
The attention span of the average person these days is not super long. People don't sit down and read books anymore. It's all audiobook.
Yeah, for sure.
And that attention shift is, I think, maybe not by design to be too tinfoil hat about it, but it is a stopping point for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because as soon as, for example, if you have somebody that has either never voted or sparingly voted in their life, and they wake up one day and they go, oh, you know what? I'm going to participate in politics. I'm going to give it a go. Then they go, okay, well, what do I need to look up?
Yeah, they don't even know where to start.
They're immediately stuck. So then they're like, oh, well, let's work out how the UK government works. That's a mess. You'll get lost in that. That's, and then you've lost a voter. Realistically, what you have to do if you want to participate in voting is you want to look up party manifestos, and you want to see who speaks closest to your own personal views and what you would want to see in terms of progress.
Yeah.
And the issue with that is that even when people find that manifesto that they agree with and they want to see enacted, that if they vote for that team, party, and they don't win, they feel like that's a wasted vote, it's a waste of time, I may have participated but I didn't pick the winning horse, so I haven't had my say. Which in essence is true. And even worse, if you do pick the winning horse and they do get into power,
but they don't deliver, then
they suddenly pull all of these U-turns, then that person that is further along the line than the person that voted and lost, so they don't really care about politics because they haven't made a difference, and they're back down to why would I vote?
Yeah.
But then if you've voted and you have picked the winning horse and they do get into power, then all of a sudden they make a U-turn on a policy that you voted for them for. Then you're like, oh, well, why should I vote? My vote's wasted. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for people to keep trying, because the unfortunate thing about a lot of political systems, and in this country as well, is that once the general election is done, we have to grin and bear it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that in response to what you've just said, I think there's 2 points I want to raise. The first being that I think that people need to view politics as sort of like a big picture, long-term thing.
Yeah, it's like an investment.
Exactly. Rather than voting in a party and going, oh, they didn't enact, they didn't bring about this policy.
Yeah, my team didn't win this season.
My team didn't win this season, therefore I'm going to give up. You go, no, it's like, even if they're making slight progress, it's long-term. It's like that small progress can then add up. Little bits of small progress in the direction you want is still worthwhile. And the other part I want to respond to is, you were saying, how do we, make people more enthusiastic about voting? How do we make them take it more seriously? And I think that's where, because you mentioned about short attention spans, things like social media
super important
can come into play and help spread a passion or interest in politics. And I think that's a very good segue for you to talk about what your channel is for.
Yeah, well, most of my channel at the minute is just me sort of spouting political stuff and things that I've seen through social media and stuff that I've researched, where I'm either not happy about something or intrigued by something and just want to start dialogues with people either on the same side or on the different side to me. I've realised that most of my comment section has been filled with sort of reform voters, which I find deeply interesting. And it turns out that a couple of the people that voted for reform, as much as immigration is in the heart of what they are talking about, thinking about in their daily lives, they have an issue, and a serious issue, with the fact that those MPs are openly racist on social media.
Yeah.
For them, they were voting for reform because they said they were going to be tough on immigration, they were going to introduce a wealth tax, amongst other things.
Did reform say they were going to bring in a wealth tax? Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that is why a lot of their sort of promises have been sort of poo-pooed by like economic and politic analysts, because to them they do seem like the crazy racist party at the minute.
Yeah.
But
that surprised me, because like a wealth tax is usually kind of a left-wing move.
Well, this is it. But what they want to do is they've plucked these huge numbers like 35 billion, 40 billion, 10 billion out of thin air, and said that that's what they're going to pump into like this public sector, and that's what they're going to put into this thing, and that's what they're going to put into this thing. But no one within the party, especially unfortunately for them, the people that are on Sky News, GB News and wherever else, and BBC, don't seem to have all of the information on how they're going to attain that money.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hilarious interviews where lots of Reform MPs just, well, I don't know.
Yeah, it's...
And unfortunately, if you're a politician and you've actually been voted in, I don't know, doesn't quite cut it.
But that's so funny that there's that huge disconnect between the support they have versus how much they're actually like prepared and planning for what they want to
like
achieve.
They've got however many thousands of votes to actually become an MP, and yet none of that process of how they're going to pay for all this stuff has been trickled down to them.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's such a...
And that's why it doesn't add credence to their mandate.
Yeah.
I mean, even worse than the fact that we have 5 Reform MPs as it is, there was the turnout for the last vote was 35% of the electorate.
Yeah.
So that means it's minuscule.
Yeah.
So you have the whole of the UK, which is 60 million odd or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, you then have the younger people that can't vote, and then you have the people that are either ineligible to vote or haven't signed up for the electoral roll, so they're not allowed to vote anyway. Yeah. You still have nearly 48 million people that can vote, and of that 48 million, only 35% turned out. So that's just over 10 million.
Mm.
That's just over 10 million. It'd be just over. So it'd be between 13 and 15 million. Sorry, my maths is a bit slow today. So it'd be between 13 and 15 million people actually voted in a country of 60 million.
Yeah.
So that means that this government, whether you voted Labour or Tory or Lib Dem or you didn't vote at all, means that you're now either suffering because you didn't vote for who you wanted to be in, suffering because you voted for the people that aren't in, or you're suffering because the people that you voted in have taken a massive U-turn and aren't performing on the things that you voted for them anyway.
Yeah.
And what's even worse is that we're suffering because most of the country can't be arsed.
Yeah.
Most of the country, 65% of people that can vote, that's not even children.
Yeah, couldn't be bothered to go out and vote.
Couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
That's not even factoring in the people that haven't registered to vote yet.
Yeah.
Because there are young people that aren't automatically put on the electoral register. So in Australia, it's illegal to not vote.
Yeah, which I think is a good thing.
If an election passes you by and you don't vote or tell them you're unable to or unwilling to for whatever they've got loads of reasons that you can list.
They fine you or something. Yeah.
They fine you.
Yeah.
They fine you for not voting. Whereas here, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
It's
We've got a government that not even half the country voted for. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I
keep not caring is the message from our government. Keep not caring, so we can just keep doing our politics stuff that you don't really understand and you're not really fussed about, because it doesn't matter if you vote anyway, because it's all the same kettle of shit anyway. So it doesn't really matter whether you vote or not vote, because we're just going to keep fucking you over anyway. And people take that and they go, yeah, all right.
Yeah, it really is a shame, and that's why I think left-leaning folk like me and you need to come together.
Yeah, and galvanise people behind a meaningful cause. And I think the unfortunate thing that I remember from growing up in like the 2000s was that the Green Party was always seen, promoted and positioned as like the tree hugger party. Yeah. Like, they're not serious politicians. They're just a bunch of, like, vegetarians.
I remember thinking that, too. I remember just this kind of general idea that all they cared about was, like, environmental issues and they wouldn't touch anything else.
Yeah, they don't care about tax. They just want to talk about trees.
But when you actually read their policies, as I was saying to you when we walked to the shop earlier, we were talking a little bit about our political opinions. The Green Party is the party that I most relate to that I've unfortunately never voted for, because
because you were mentioning the
for tactical voting
versus voting with your heart.
Because of where I live, the chances of like the Tories getting in, I had to vote tactically to keep them out, even though I know that if I'm actually being consistent with my own values,
core values,
I should vote for the Green Party
every single time.
And it really is a shame, because they want things like a wealth tax. They want, obviously, more environmentally friendly practices in place.
It's not their only policy.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's what people tar with the same brush, because they go like, oh, so Labour means that the public services are going to get a good injection, and it means, you know, slightly higher tax, but it means that the lower people get more out of it. And then the Tories, you have lower tax, and then the upper people get more out of it. Then you have Reform that's just been tarred as racist, and then you get the Greens, just the fucking tree huggers. And then you get Lib Dems, which is just the people who don't vote Labour or Tory. Yeah. And it's just not the case. Every party has their own manifesto. And if you want to participate in politics, you have to put a little bit of effort in. Yeah. And I feel like it is unfortunate that nowadays people are lacking in effort, and it's of no fault of their own.
Yeah.
Like, we have quick dopamine in social media and alcohol and everything else, and it's simple to just go, oh, no, I'll stick Netflix on, love.
But that's why, and I think this is a nice way to tie a bow on the conversation as well. That's why for the sort of goals that your channel wants to achieve and the goals that my channel wants to achieve, the best thing we can do is take advantage of that social media dopamine hit
absolutely
lifestyle that people have nowadays and use it to inspire people about these issues.
Yeah.
And so if we can make quick, funny, entertaining videos that spread messages about how, you know, we can make the environment better, we can treat animals better, we can vote in better politicians that actually care.
Yeah.
If we can use that to push these kind of messages to people, you know, if enough people do what we're doing,
yeah,
we could see positive changes in future.
Exactly. It's about the future. It's about our future. And people aren't as connected to that as they should be, because they're too busy thinking about, you know, immigrants stealing their money. They're too worried about vegans trying to take away their bacon.
Yeah.
And it detracts from what we really should be thinking and talking about. You know, I don't know about you, but I was certainly brought up, you know, oh, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion.
Yeah, I heard that growing up too, which is annoying because I'm interested in both those things.
Exactly. And as we now get older, we start to realise why we were told not to talk about them. Because if you talk about religion and you talk about politics too much, you start to realise the failings in both of those systems, in both of those aspects of modern life, that they may not be as public servanty as they are.
Yeah.
And they're not really serving us.
Yeah.
We're serving them. I mean, you know, you look at politicians and people just go, slime bags, douchebags, thieves, you know, schemers.
And we're the ones
cheaters,
voting them in.
And we vote them in.
Yeah.
Because we think that, you know, we need Labour over Tory. But it's the same shade of shit no matter which way you put paint on it. You know, a red turd is a blue turd is an orange turd.
But that's the thing, is even though I agree with what you're saying, it's like, it's in a situation where you have to choose between two turds, pick the least bad turd. And so it's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's people should go out and vote, even if they don't feel inspired to keep the worst turd out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think it has been the battle against that worst turd for so long that people have just given up.
Yeah.
Because whether they vote for this turd or this turd, it's still shit.
It's tricky.
It is tricky. It's absolutely, it is really, really impossible. And that's why I've started sort of reaching out to platforms and personalities that I think would actually get on board with something like this. Because I spoke to you briefly on the phone the other day about Nico Milana from the Beta Squad. Now, he I understand that he did it for vibes, but him running for London Mayor and him then running in an actual general election was, I think, deeply inspiring.
For sure.
It was entirely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And some of it was entirely fabricated, but it was fun. And it was silly, and it was a strange and zany alternative that got big media attention. And if someone like him, I mean, I think his following is, I think it's like 7 or 8 million on his main channel, and then now he has the NDL, the Nico Defence League, which is his like party-esque. I think that's got roughly 4 million subscribers on YouTube. I don't know about other platforms, but that reach. I mean, don't get me wrong, none of the candidates that he had out there were voted in.
Yeah.
But some of them garnered real support. Some of them had like hundreds of votes. And considering that they didn't have any party donors, any real influence other than him making a few flyers and saying, go out and tell people. Go out and tell people.
It just goes to show that when people put effort in, if they can build up a following, you can make change happen.
Yeah.
For sure.
And, you know, with that case, you know, his is just an isolated case. He wanted to do it. He did it. Okay. He didn't do it particularly, quote-unquote, well, because he didn't win anywhere. But it doesn't mean that he didn't get young people thinking.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that after he ran for, or as he was in the build-up to London Mayor, there was a significant increase. I think it was something of like 13 to 20% increase in young people being placed on the electoral register.
Yeah.
Like there was a visible increase
That's-
from when Nico started posting about running for London Mayor
Yeah.
to people like younger people 18 to 25 signing up to vote.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Like he is people's sole reason for giving a shit about politics.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy that he's just some guy that was doing YouTube, then got part of the beta squad, continued doing YouTube. That is his entire life. He is just essentially a children's entertainer and a
Yeah.
people's entertainer. And he thought, sod it, I'll run for London Mayor. It'll be banter. And it was.
Yeah.
It absolutely was. But so much more, the ramifications of him doing that meant that people started looking at politics. And even if
Yes.
it's just that little bit of awareness that gets a few more people on the register, ready to vote if they want to vote, that's a massive impact.
Exactly. And just imagine what kind of impact that guy could have had if he didn't just do it for the meme.
I feel like if he didn't just
No,
do
but
it
I'm
for
saying-
the meme, though, it wouldn't appeal to as many young people.
But that's
though.
the thing. Is like I'm not saying that the two don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Very true.
You could be someone that has a social media platform, whether it's YouTube or whatever, has a fan base, has fun with it, entertains people, but still genuinely cares about politics.
Yeah.
And I think that someone like that could make a real significant change. I think you should do it, Charlie.
I mean, I'm going to try. I have emailed Nico, so whether he gets back to me or not, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Are there any final topics you want to hit? Just because we've been recording for over an hour and I'm worried that we're going to run out of storage.
Oh, that's fair. No. So I would say simply that politics is important and people's vote is important. Voting is important. And as much as it is difficult to put in that little bit of extra effort, and no adult wants to do homework. There's a reason that people stopped going to college, stopped going to school, and got into work. It's because we didn't like homework.
Yeah.
You do your 9 till 5, you leave work at the door. I know some people have to work outside of hours, but we're not talking about. We can't include everybody all at once. But I would simply say that voting does matter. Voting is important. Politics is important.
100%.
And if you complain and you don't like how things are running for you or for the country right now, know that you do have a voice, you do have a choice, and if you want to see change, then you have to kind of be change.
Exactly. 100%.
If you're going to keep being the same and you're not going to participate in politics, I mean, my biggest thing for when the referendum came around, the EU referendum, was that if you haven't voted, shut up. Because if you're not going to play the game, you don't get to moan about the result.
Exactly.
Yeah. This isn't football. Just because you support the team doesn't mean, But if you're not going to support any team, you can't just moan about football.
Exactly, 100%.
If you've got a Liverpool supporter, an Arsenal supporter, a Manchester United supporter, all sat around the table, and some guy sits down with a Saracens shirt and goes, "Never watched football in my life," you don't have an opinion, fella.
Another way to put it is just if you care enough about it to moan, act like it.
Do it.
Go out
Show
and do it. Yeah.
If you want to have a moan, then you go out and vote.
Yeah.
And when that vote is wasted, when your time is wasted, when your party didn't get in, moan as much as you like. That is your mandate to moan.
Yeah.
If you voted, you moan to your heart's content. You moan to me, you moan to your mum, you moan to your nan, moan. Go for it. In fact, that's what half the British people are here for. We love a moan.
Yeah.
We do.
Born to moan.
Born to moan. Probably should try and vote once in a while. So I think that's all we're going to discuss for today.
A pretty interesting conversation considering we agree on almost everything.
Yeah, it has gone on for a long time, considering that we've mostly gone, yeah.
I agree.
I agree. But yeah, no, I mean, if you like what Jake has said, you can find Jake on YouTube and...
YouTube, Instagram and TikTok.
Instagram and TikTok. Jake Aston, FTA.
That's me.
That's Jake.
And if you've liked what Charlie's had to say, you're probably subscribed to him already because I think this whole thing's coming out on his account. But subscribe to my boy at One Concerned Millennial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one more concerned millennial on
and
TikTok.
that's on TikTok and YouTube as well, right?
And YouTube, yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So subscribe to this guy and maybe subscribe to me too.
Yeah. Subscribe to Jake for all of your animal ethics and moral dilemmas of the day. And listen to me moan about politics.
Sweet. Thanks for watching/listening.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, Jake.
Thank you for having me, Charlie.
Anytime.
See you later. Blah!